The moment you open your eyes, you see something. If there is nothing, you see nothingness also. So eyes are always doing something, see. Like that the other senses also. As a result of which what happens? It starts gathering the imprints of so many objects in this world. All objects are perishable. Perishable objects, when imprinted by the mind has got a perishable effect in it. So, cheto darpanamarjanam. It is just like the glass of the mirror acquiring dust throughout the day. In the same manner, as long as you live, except the hours of sleep, your mind is acquiring a lot of worldly dross, blemish and dust. Now, if somebody or something can clean it, wipe it, a duster, Sri Krishna Sankirtanam is the duster for it. My Gurudev once told me, I am the sweeping broomstick, he said. I was surprised when he said. I was not so much surprised, but I was very attentive and I was enlightened. Use me as a broomstick, he said. So here, Sri Krishna Sankirtana is said to be the duster of the mirror of the mind. Sri Krishna Sankirtanam cheto darpanamarjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. This word bhava, it is a mahadavagni. It is just like a huge wild forest fire. Is not the world very huge all around? It is just like a blazing fire in a huge forest. That fire will be extinguished or put out by this Sri Krishna Sankirtana. The world is very huge, endless, and you are an individual. You walk anywhere you like, keeping Krishna Sankirtana in your mouth and heart. Hare Rama Govinda Krishna Murare. Chanting in this manner you walk, maybe in a desert, maybe in a forest, maybe in the marketplaces, maybe amidst unfavorable people, drunkards even. But you should not leave the Sankirtana. Keep the memory of the Lord in your heart. Always keep that memory, fond memory. Carry an affiliation to the Lord in the form of memory and chanting. Bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. Generally, to put out a fire, you must have a lot of water, fire brigade, etc. Whoosh! Here it is not that. From your mouth you produce this godly word, God, that utterance. Shreyah kairava chandrika vitaranam. Shreyah kairava chandrika vitaranam. Vidyavadhu jivanam. See, Nama Sankirtana is given a number of descriptions and adjectives. On the one hand, it does your mind, removes all the dross and blemish. The huge fire called the worldly life, it puts out. Then, Shreyah kairava chandrika vitaranam. It fills your mind with the beautiful rays of Kairava Chandrika, that moon-like rays arising from the Kairava Chandrika, that is the white lotus. And this particular white lotus is made Shreyaha. You know the word Shreyaha, it means felicity, spiritual felicity. That is what gives you moksha. So the Shreyas, as if it is a white lotus, will arise, will blossom in your heart, and the beautiful moon-like rays will start spreading and filling the whole of your system. Shreyah kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadhu jivanam. In the uttering of God's name, in having Nama Sankirtana, it has got a lot of romantic, ecstatic effect also. Vidyavadhu jivanam. Suppose Vidya is in the way of a Vadhu, a bride. That bride, this is actually Krishna Sankirtana, is a Jivana. That is how this Radha Krishna Bhakti has been evolved in our land. For the bride of knowledge, this is Jivana. So any bride will be very happy to think about the bridegroom. In the same manner, this is the effect. Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam. Day after day, every day. Anandam buddhivardhanam. The blissfulness that you are experiencing, it will become like an ocean. And that ocean will become more and more endless as the day grows, one after the other. So the expanse that you are able to feel, the blissful expanse, is practically endless day after day. Purna amrita aswadanam. Purna amrita aswadanam. You will be able to rejoice. You will be able to rejoice. Delicious, that delicious flow of nectar, that full-fold nectar, you will be able to enjoy. Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamrita swadanam sarvatmasnapanam param vijayate. Sarva atmasnapanam. It will bathe not merely your mind, intelligence, heart and ego, it will bathe all the senses, every pore in your body of hair. Everything will be bathed. Such a Sri Krishna Sankirtana, param vijayate. It excels paramountly. It excels far supreme in the world. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhavamahadavagni nirvapanam Shreyah kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadhu jivanam Anandam buddhivardhanam pratipadam purnamrita swadanam sarvatmasnapanam param vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. I was wondering why the mind is described as a mirror. Cheto darpanamarjanam. Have you thought about it? Let us think about it. The mind is actually functioning like a mirror. What does the mirror do? The mirror reflects the objects which are in its front. What does the mind do? You may wonder. The mind is within the body. What interacts with the world are the senses, physical senses, material senses in the physical body. Though the interactions are taking place in the sensory level. If at all there is any impurity coming, should not the impurity be to the senses? Why should it be to the mind? Because it is very safely encased within the body. So why should it become impure? So here is the point. Though the interactions are taking place seemingly at the level of the senses by themselves cannot interact. For every interaction, the interactional temptation or decision arises in the mind. I always say that every activity is initiated and caused by the mind. And then, after initiating the activity, the mind alone sustains and supports it during its duration. Finally, when it is concluded and terminated in the mind alone. So actually, mind is the master, the maker, the holder, the concluder of all activities and interactions. The senses come only in between. They have only an intermediate role. What happens to the inside mind? It generates a desire or a resolve for an activity. Following that, it is conveyed to the senses and senses are employed. So actually what is taking place? In the mind alone, all reflections take place. The eyes see a number of objects. All of them are seen and remembered by the eyes or by the mind. So in the mind, that reflection is resembling like the reflection in a mirror. That is why he has used the word Cheto Darpanamarjanam. Now whenever interactions take place and interactional outcomes fall, the mind feels disturbed. Either the outcomes cause a desire or a dislike or a fear or multiples of these three fundamental basic emotions. And these emotions tend to agitate the mind, result in stress and strain, discomfort and whatnot. So there is a constant dislodging. Just like the mirror losing its reflective power, the mind also is losing its purity by virtue of interactions and interactional outcome. This is something very important. And what is the nature of the mind? The mind left to itself with no sensory interactions also will undergo a number of emotions. Of course, all emotions are caused by sensory imprints, that you can say. You think of Ravana. He was a very great king. In the golden palace of Sri Lanka, he was there. Somehow his sister Shurpanakha intruded into him. He was having an assembly. She started speaking to him with the sisterly freedom. What nonsense, you are sitting like this. I have been disrespected and maimed by Rama and Lakshmana. Rama has got a beautiful wife, Janaki. She should be brought to your harem, then only it will become full. You know, on hearing it, Ravana became enamored of, fascinated. This is the nature of the mind. It starts galloping sometimes. Simply a speech delivered by the sister made him a seeker of Sita. Otherwise, he was a great king with a number of Rajnis around him. There was no necessity for another person, and that too already married. But the mind is like that. Spurati valgati gacchati yachate Brahmati majjati samharati swayam aparatamupayatyapi kevalam chalata chanchala shaktitaya manaha. This is again from Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana. How beautiful is this Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana with an assortment of meters. Vasishtha is describing, Valmiki has copied the whole of Yoga Vasishtha Ramayana. Spurati valgati gacchati yachate Spurati valgati gacchati yachate Brahmati majjati samharati swayam aparatamupayatyapi kevalam chalati chanchala shaktitaya manaha. Mind is given to constantly vibration, movement, so to say. This chanchala shakti is ingrained in the mind, so it cannot keep quiet. It will always be doing something. Like a monkey which is restless, it is already on top of a tree. It has also taken some intoxicant. So you can imagine how desultory the monkey will be. Similar is the mind. Spurati. It will always reveal itself, never keep quiet. Something or the other it will be thinking. Valgadi, it jumps, takes a big leap. Gacchadi, sometimes it moves. Yachade, it goes on begging. Ravana became a sannyasin, a pseudo-sannyasin, went before Sita and he started begging before her. Such a great king. The same thing happens to Sita also. On seeing a golden deer, suddenly the mind galloped. And it developed a strong fascination, irresistible fascination for the pseudo deer. Rama also followed suit. See the havoc it works. Spurati valgati gacchati yachate Brahmati, it gets agitated. Majjati, sometimes it gets into a stupor. Samharati swayam, it can rise to any occasion. It can kill anybody. It can beat anybody. It can commit any extent of a crime. Aparatamupayatyapi kevalam. Mind you, all this is done by the mind. And by undergoing or by lending itself to all these temptations, emotions, agitations and the like, what is happening to the mind? Aparatamupayatyapi. It becomes very, very low, inferior, wretched sometimes. Kevalam chalati chanchala shaktitaya manaha. And the only reason for it is the desultory character of the mind. Every one of us has a mind, but understand, it is desultory in character. There is no consistency, there is no singularity or single direction. It will always be given to multiple directions. This is what happens. Spurati valgati gacchati yachate Brahmati majjati samharati swayam aparatamupayatyapi kevalam chalati chanchala shaktitaya manaha. 14 years were the duration of the forest exile for Rama. 13 years all the three spent together. Everything went off well. In the last year, Rama wanted to be austere. and put up a tent. Sita developed a garden around it. And very soon came the pseudo golden deer. The whole life was upside down. Just imagine. Aparatam upayadi. Such a great Janaki, there was no reason for her to seek that golden deer. She told Rama, if you cannot catch hold of it alive, bring at least the skin. Can you imagine such a Janaki enslaved by a desire for a pseudo golden deer? This is the way mind works its havoc in anybody. Be careful about it. It can cause anything in the way of a desire or a hatred or a fear, jealousy, intolerance, wretchedness and what not. Shankara describes that the mind is actually the real magic behind the whole of worldly life. Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari tulyam nijantargatam pashyanna atmani mayaya behirivodbhutam yatha nidraya yasakshat kurude prabodha samaye swatmanameva advayam tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namayidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. This is actually from Shankaracharya's Dakshina Murti Ashtagam. He says, Vishwam Darpana Drishyamana Nagari Tulyam Nijandargatam. I think all of you should know this. We all refer to the world saying that here is the external world, gross world, physical world. All of us are looking at it alike. Your emphasis seems to be the grossness, externality and commonality of the world. But do you know, this world comes into existence only when you wake up individually from sleep. Suppose you were asleep, no world would have been there. In fact, it is not there. The moment you wake up, that waking up individual is looking at the world. And even when you look at the world, are you seeing it externally as gross, or are you perceiving it mentally as the subtle? Have you heard my question? My dear viewers, you speak so much about externality, grossness and distances. But do you know that these are reflected in your mind? My eyes are very small. These small eyes see a huge mountain, a more expansive sky. They cannot be folded inside the eye. At the same time, I have a full experience of the magnitude. This magnitude is reflected by your mind. And anything that reflects is a mirror. So the mind is the mirror in which the whole Vishwa, the universe, is reflected. So Shankara has no difficulty, no reluctance in calling it Nijantargatam. The whole externality is a creation of your own inner mind. Just like a mirror reflects the objects in front, our mind is reflecting through the senses the objects in front. You have no access to anything outside. Every experience is inner, personal, subjective. Even the experience of the object is a subjective experience. Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari tulyam. This world is nothing other than what is reflected in the mind, in a mirror. Pashyanna atmani mayaya behirivodbhutam yatha nidraya. Pashyanna atmani. Everyone sees this world in his own self, inside. Mayaya, by virtue of the inscrutable power of called Maya. Consciousness has got an inscrutable, avarnaniya power. Behirivodbhutam. Actually, nothing is seen outside. Outside is a notion created by the mind. The inside also is another notion. So the mind itself creating the notion inside and outside shows the world as if it is outside. Yatha nidraya. Suppose you go to sleep and you suddenly have a dream. Obviously the dream is within the body. When you are experiencing a dream within the body, you feel that with another body you have travelled to Delhi. You went by a plane, got down there, went for your job, met a few people. Meanwhile you felt hungry and you went to a hotel for eating, whereas the waking food is still lying undigested. Now all this travel is definitely external. But when you are sleeping and your body is lying intact, with which body did you go? Another gross body. Who created it? Mind created it. Where is that gross body? It's only in feeling. No physical body was created. No physical Delhi was there. Everything was felt by the mind. Yatha nidraya. Yes sakshat kurude prabodha samaye swatmanamevadvayam. If you are intelligent, wise and you have viveka, what should you do? When you wake up, you should understand the whole thing is a jugglery of my inner mind consciousness. The whole thing is a jugglery of the inner mind, the consciousness. The inner mind, the consciousness. There is no externality except what the mind makes and experiences. Now, he who realizes this truth when he wakes up by virtue of his viveka, enlightenment, Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. I prostrate before that Dakshina Murti who represents the supreme spiritual wisdom by virtue of which he realizes that everything is internal, subjective, personal, the inscrutable power and display of consciousness. There are 8 slokas in Dakshinamurti Stotram. It's a great masterly work, only philosophical. Vishwam darpana drishyamana nagari tulyam nijandargatam pashyanna atmani mayaya behirivodbhutam yatha nidraya yas sakshat kurude prabodha samaye swatmanameva advayam Tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye Namaidam Shri Dakshina Murtaye. Why I am mentioning all this? Only in connection with this wonderful bhakti. See, Sreemad Bhagavatam itself is Pratyaksha Krishna. And all the glories are about him. What can Nama Sankirtana mean? How can it purify the mind? How the mind acts as a mirror, gaining dust and impurity every moment by employing the senses and indulging in sensory interactions and receiving the outcome. And what is the one means of wiping off and cleaning the mirror? Vaggadgada dravate yasya chittam rudatya bhikshnam hasadi kvajiccha vilajja udgayati nrityate cha Madbhakti yukto bhuvanam punadi. Srimad Bhagavata offers only devotion as the purifying agency and the madhyama. Nothing else. Don't go for any rituals. Don't go even for holy places. Make your own mind holy and pure. By what? By resorting to Nama Sankirtana. By resorting to Satsanga. By resorting to hearing constantly and repeatedly the glories of God, the excellences of God, listening to the absolute truth. Vaggadgada dravate yasya chittam. When you are given to this Nama Sankirtana, Vak Gadgada dravate yasya chittam, the mind starts melting and there is choking of voice, Gadgada. Rudatya bhikshnam. You start weeping. There are people, when I went to Trivandrum, one of my listeners somehow my attention was drawn to that person. Both the eyes are trickling, not drops, continuously the eyes are trickling. One person. Can you imagine? Why is it? This is the magic of devotion, the miracle of devotion, the sublimity, the acceleration of devotion. Rudatya bhikshnam hasadikvajitya. Some people will also be laughing and smiling. Vilajja udgayati. Casting aside all sense of shame. What will others say? What will others think? All this is thrown away. Udgayati nrityate cha. Loudly do the Gana. That is why I was telling you. Hare Rama Govinda Krishna Murare. Hare Rama Govinda Krishna Murare. Udgayati Nrityateja. Sometimes they go on dancing also. Mad Bhakti Yukto Bhuvanam Punadi. When my bhakti is imbued into the devotee's system.